seconds away on Studio 5.
You want to be my friend?
Uh-huh.
Well, I'm gonna have to think about that.
Sitting down with the Oscar Gold cast of Same Kind of Different as Me. And how would you describe the film to Denver or to your wife today? Meet the man who wrote the best-selling book and lived the life. Plus, she's back. Your first look at Medea in Tyler Perry's frighteningly funny Boo 2. Studio 5 starts now. Welcome to Studio 5. We have lots to get to, and the very first thing is this week's look at the best in uplifting entertainment news. Let's start the countdown. At number 5, Kirk Cameron presents Revive Us 2.
1 year ago at Revive Us, over 150,000 believers gathered in theaters across America for a national family meeting. We prayed, we worshiped, we put our faith into action, and something remarkable happened. But we didn't cross the finish line, we crossed the starting line.
This national family meeting will be broadcast from the Museum of the Bible into movie theaters across America, Monday, October 24th.
Join me and Dr. Ben Carson, Johnny Erickson Tata, Ravi Zacharias, Alex and Stephen Kendrick, producers of the movies Fireproof and War Room. Special artists and musical guests Zach Williams and Christian Cuevas.
At number 4.
I'm Ron Swanson.
Nick Offerman may be best known for his role on Parks and Rec.
For the last 3 years, I have served as troop leader of the Pawnee Rangers. This is our handbook. I wrote the whole thing myself.
The actor tells Men's Health magazine he's using his love of carpentry to help people in need.
Good work is our salvation and joy. That's why Offerman Woodshop and I are spearheading a fundraising campaign to support our friends at Woodworks in Los Angeles. As in, I would work if I could. This charismatic social enterprise allows citizens that are homeless or living in extreme poverty to earn credit towards paying off basic living expenses like rent or utilities.
He's matching donations dollar for dollar until he's raised enough for 2 years of operation.
It's not a charity, it's giving people a chance at the simple dignity of doing good work.
That begins the countdown and brings us to what's new at the box office this week. Studio 5 is sitting down with Renee Zellweger, Greg Kinnear, and Djimon Hounsou. They're the stars of the new film, Same Kind of Different as Me. It is the real-life story of how a homeless man saves the life of a wealthy man whose life looks good on the outside, but it's really falling apart.
I had another dream last night.
Was it a good one, or was it about me?
It was about a poor wise man who changes the city.
Debbie Hall's dream gave birth to the best-selling book, The Same Kind of Different as Me. It also began the friendship between the two men who wrote it, her husband Ron, a wealthy art dealer, and Denver Moore, a homeless man. They met at a Texas shelter.
My wife showed me Christ-like forgiveness a few years before that for having an affair, and she threw my sin as far as the east is from the west, never to bring it up again. Just like Christ forgives our sins, she erased it out off the blackboard of her life and memory. And so I told her for that forgiveness, I would do anything she asked the rest of our lives together. And she had asked me to do nothing except be faithful and back in the church and serve and tithe and all the kind of things that we're supposed to be doing as believers. I was always waiting for the shoe to fall, and then one day she asked me to be friends with a crazy homeless man who threatened to kill everybody.
That's a big ask.
What about him?
He can be dangerous.
Hi. What's your name?
You don't need to know my name.
Well, I'd like to know your name. We have to talk to him.
I don't understand what's going on here.
That's a man from my dream.
You'd be doing me a big favor and just being nicer.
You want to be my friend?
Uh-huh.
Well, I'm gonna have to think about that.
It's a miracle story and a major motion picture with an Academy Award-winning cast. Renee, you play Debbie.
Yes.
What is it about her that allowed her to forgive her husband, first of all, and then send him chasing after a homeless man? What about it?
That's a question I would love to have been able to ask her myself. And in reading the book and in talking to her husband, Ron Hall, what I gather is she was a good person, just inherently good, and she had faith, and she wanted to commit her life to making a difference in other people's lives. And boy, did she.
Yeah. I imagine that touched you personally.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it does make you ask yourself, okay, what am I doing?
I couldn't understand why I never could see where he went. I think God was giving me a lesson about me, he's Debbie.
Jamin, you play Denver. Do you think he's the hero in this story?
I think Debbie's the hero. Debbie brings us, together. Debbie brings the human touch out of us. I mean, for Ron, obviously.
What touched you most about Denver's character?
When you look at where he came from, what, the challenges, in life, sort of like he was faced with life. And despite all that, the wisdom that comes through his outlook on life, unconditional love that he has for humanity, that comes out literally after, sort of like Ron Hall sort of breaks the ice, breaks the, that connection. It's beautiful to see, and it's very, he's quite a tough character to portray.
God put every stars in heaven and even gave every one of them a name. If one was gonna fall from the sky, that was up to him too.
Denver's wisdom comes from many real-life challenges. Most are unimaginable.
The short version is he was crazy. He was an ex-con. He had been on the streets for 25 years. Wow. He did not read or write. He'd never been to school a day in his life. And the most tragic thing, when he was just a young, innocent 16-year-old boy back on a plantation in Louisiana, one day he was helping a white woman change a flat tire when all of a sudden 3 Klansmen come out of the woods on horseback and accused him of bothering a white lady. They put a noose around his neck and dragged him behind a horse and told him never again speak to a white person and never again look a white woman in the eye. He was 62 years old on the day that I first laid eyes on him. Wow. And he had kept that promise from the time he was 16.
Wow. And here you have this white woman essentially
and you have this white woman that's getting in his face and forcing him to look her in the eye.
What you reading? It's a book of stories, poetry. I used to read to you when you were little. You never liked it much.
Greg, you play Ron. I see he makes a cameo in the film. I've had a chance to meet and talk to him, so I know you have as well. What was it about him that you gleaned, that you wanted to make sure you brought to this role?
I think just how much Debbie, his wife, and Denver, how much he learned from them, how much they changed him. This is a guy who was very insulated and kind of guy who's looking to seek forgiveness through writing a check for his wife's cause. All those kind of go-to touchstones of the human kind of selfish behavior. He's the first to say he's a flawed person, but I can tell through this movie how deeply affected he was, not only by her, but his relationship with Denver and that passion for trying to, for needing to get that story out.
I worried I was so different from other people, but what I found out was everybody's different. Same kind of different as me.
Same Kind of Different as Me is in American theaters this weekend and still to come right here in Studio 5. We're sitting down with the man who wrote the book and lived the real life. Ron Hall is here next. And welcome back to Studio 5. We're continuing our countdown of this week's best headlines in uplifting entertainment news. Here's the next one. At number 3.
Actress Kate Hudson honored World Food Day by trying to get more food and awareness for those who are hungry. She paid a visit to some schools and farms in Cambodia.
It was a really eye-opening experience, and This whole trip has been so beautiful, so great. Makes me want to do more.
Hudson's involved with the program Watch Hunger Stop, started by designer Michael Kors.
At number 2. Singer Torrin Wells lends his voice to this year's 48th Annual Dove Awards, alongside Holland Wells and an impressive roster of Christian performers.
The stage that everybody's trying to run to already has a star, and that star is Jesus Christ.
This year's show includes many faces familiar to Studio 5, like Shonda Pierce, Jackie Velasquez, and John Gray.
Fill me up till I overflow.
And that leaves only one more headline in this week's countdown. We'll bring it to you shortly. Just moments ago, we brought you your first look at the film, Same Kind of Different as Me. It's also a best-selling book, and the man who lived the real-life story is Ron Hall. He's here with us. So let's take another look at the film and then sit down with him.
We don't share the same life. We don't share anything.
You can leave. You choose.
How would you describe the film to Denver or to your wife today? What would you say we're going to be seeing?
Well, we're going to be seeing a very true picture of 2 years out of our lives. Mm-hmm. With the book, you get to see more, but with the film, you have to just take scenes and that drive the story. Mm-hmm. But it's a very accurate picture of 2 years of our life story. And if it does well, we can tell the rest of the story in the sequel.
I like that. I like that. At the time that we meet you and your wife in the film, I mean, your marriage is on a brink.
Our marriage had been put back together, but I was still paying for that in my own mind. Mm-hmm. Not that she was asking me to do that. So when she asked me to be friends with this man, I was not going to tell her no.
Wow. What do you think it was about your wife and her heart that was so willing to be obedient and to push you to be obedient and to be so forgiving? What was it?
She was a God chaser. She chased hard after God. She wanted everything God had to offer, and she believed that God was much greater than anybody even knew. You know, as opposed to me, though I was a believer and had been a believer for 20 years at that time, I had God in a box. And I liked my God in a box because I could kind of keep him where I wanted him and just go to him.
I think many of us like God in a box.
On the days that I needed him, and the other days I was fine without him, I thought.
Yeah.
But anyway, I used to say that, you know, I liked him because it was like a heavenly slot machine. I would throw in my prayer and pull the handle and expect the answer. Yeah. But I didn't do anything to deserve any of that, and I wasn't really serving him the way that I should have been serving him as a believer.
But she was...
She was a God chaser. Oh, was she ever. And she heard from God. She listened for God. She saw everything in the world. She knew it was all God-centered. And so...
When did you know your life in this picture was a book, was a movie? When did you realize that?
Well, it was actually Denver's idea after Debbie died and before Denver moved in with me. He said, Mr. Ron, ain't nobody ever going to believe our story. We got to write us a book. And I said, well, what's this we, Kemosabe? You don't read and you don't write. So who's going to write this book? And he said, oh, you know what I mean. He said, I know my part of the story, so I'm going to tell it to you. And you already know your part, so you write that down. And then whenever we get through with the two of them, we'll put them together, and that'll be our book. So the next 3.5 years, we sat at the breakfast table, and we wrote us a book.
Now, I've heard you say that what you call are Denverisms. There's some sayings that he has that really stand out. What are some of those you could share?
Well, there's one that I use almost every day,
wow.
And that's if the devil ain't messing with you, he's already got you.
I guess that's right.
Yes, and another one, like we're all homeless, just working our way home. He told me, he said, Mr. Ron, whether we's rich or whether we's poor or something in between, he said, this earth ain't no final resting place. So he said, in a way, we're all homeless, just working our way home. He told me one day I was walking the streets with him, and I was not being so kind to some obnoxious homeless people that were there sitting on the curbs. And he said, what do you see down at the end of the street? And I said, well, you talking about the courthouse? He said, that's what I'm talking about. He said, Mr. Ron, that courthouse is full of judges. God don't need no more judges. He's got courthouses full of them. He said, God needs servants. So if you're going to be walking the streets with me, don't ever judge, just serve.
Wow, I'm thinking of someone who didn't know how to read, who didn't know how to write. That was a very, very wise man.
Well, he told me one day when we were walking the streets at first, he said, are you one of those Christians? And I said, I'm thinking maybe he'd seen my halo.
Yeah, nice.
I said,
there's a sign.
And I said, yes, why do you think I'm down here helping? He said, helping? You think putting food on a plate is helping? I mean, we can put food on our own plate. He said, if you want to help somebody, you got to crawl down in the ditch with them. When they're strong enough to crawl out on your back, then you helped them. But right now, you just blessing folks. And he said, he said, that ain't what I want to ask you. He said, there's something about you Christians that really bothers us, all of us homeless folks. I said, well, what is it, Denver? And he said, we want to know why all you Christians worship one homeless man on Sunday, then turn your back on the first one you see on Monday. He said, you know, sometimes you successful folks, y'all can rise up so high trying to get yourself some more stuff that you miss getting to know about God on your way up. He said, but you could never stoop too low to help somebody on the streets and have God miss knowing about you.
Ron's film is in American theaters this Friday, October 20th. Still ahead on Studio 5.
My dear! Ma, you still there? Ma! My dear! My dear!
Madea and the gang are back for Boo 2. Get the scoop from Tyler Perry himself next.
Welcome back to Studio 5. Here's this week's top story in our countdown of the best headlines in uplifting entertainment news.
At number 1. With vintage cars like this pretty red Ford, the stage is set for the 1940s. A young Lou Zamperini and his wife Cynthia are coming here to the tent you see in the distance to hear from a young evangelist who has not quite made a name for himself on the national scene, evangelist Billy Graham. Studio 5 is on the set of Unbroken, Path to Redemption. The new film continues the incredible story of Olympian and war hero Louis Zamperini. It first came to the screen in 2014 in Angelina Jolie's movie Unbroken. And this one includes scenes with evangelist Billy Graham, played by his grandson, Will.
These are some big shoes to portray.
Well, one is, I'm not trying to fill his shoes per se. I want to be pleasing to the Lord. That's my first and foremost, just like my granddad did back in '49. He wasn't trying to do anything. He was just trying to be obedient and pleasing to the Lord.
And that wraps this week's countdown. Also, this week, Tyler Perry is back along with the famous Madea for Boo 2. It was a box office smash last year at Halloween, and here you go again. Here's your first look.
What the hell wrong with you? I hit the brakes. Look. I got this. Y'all sit there and hush.
Madea!
Oh, hell no.
So Madea is back for Boo 2.
Yeah.
You a fan of horror films?
No.
Is she a fan?
No, not at all. Not at all. That's why I didn't want to make this too scary. It was like, hold up on that. Pull up on the scare. Just give me big laughs.
Ma! Madea! Ma, you still there? Ma! Madea!
Now, you have a few roles in this. You are Uncle Joe. You're also Brian, both of you fathers. How does that compare to Tyler, the dad?
I'm hoping I'm not as much of a wimp and as pushover as Brian is, man. I'm trying to, because I'm raising a boy, so I've got to be strong and be upright for him. So all I've dealt with so far are terrible too. So I don't know what it's like to have a teenager, but I'll be 60 then. I ain't gonna be taking no shit from nobody around that time. Yeah.
Has Madea talked to your son?
No, never, ever. He has not met her, and I don't want him to meet her. I don't even know how to have that conversation.
Now, you are director, writer, producer, author, the list goes on and on. You never went to school for any of this. No. Where does this gifting come from?
I'm grateful for it. I didn't even know that I could do any of those things. I learn in progress. So I've just done a lot of watching, a lot of paying attention, and then you know, trying to sharpen what I have.
Thanks, Tyler Perry. Boo 2 is in American theaters this week. Still to come here on Studio 5.
Yes, you have to pray, but alongside your prayer, put some preparation.
An encouraging message from Hollywood heavyweight DeVon Franklin.
And welcome back to Studio 5. Let's take a look ahead to what's coming up next week.
And the dove goes to... Okay. All right. The Garden by Carrie Job.
Wow, so fun, and what an honor.
Fresh from her Dove Award win, Carrie Job joins us for a special Studio 5. We have your all-access pass to the Garden Tour.
It won't be a concert. It'll be a night of worship, a night to come with expectation in your heart to experience the presence of God.
Something good, something kind.
It's an interview and episode you won't want to miss.
That's just one story from next week's rundown. Hope you'll join us for that. As for the final word for this show, I'm giving this to filmmaker DeVon Franklin. It seems only appropriate after you've got your first look at 2 films in this episode of Studio 5. Here's DeVon.
Too often we pray and then we don't get up and work for what we just prayed for. And sometimes I believe that our prayers actually mask our fears because we're afraid to go and do. So when someone says, hey, what are you doing about that? Oh, I'm praying on it. That's cool. But God is not going to give us what we have the ability to get ourselves. Faith without works is dead. Faith with works is alive. So I believe that that first commandment is all about, yes, you have to pray, but alongside your prayer, put some preparation. Get up and work for it because you're expecting God to do it. If you invite a guest over your house and they RSVP and say they're coming, what do? You get the house ready. Why? Because you know it's on the way. Same thing with our prayers. We believe the blessing is coming, so we got to get our life ready to receive it.
A great word. And by the way, DeVon Franklin has a new book, The Hollywood Commandments. It is out now. You can learn more about that and about him in a future episode of Studio 5. For now, that is the final word for this edition of Studio 5. Until next time, reach out and touch me at Ephraim Graham on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and Snapchat. And then you come on back and see where Studio 5 takes you next week. Bye-bye, everybody.